Hello and welcome to the Watson Weekend. We are your hosts. I'm Rick Watson.
Hi, it's Jessica Liseski. We're back. Same time, same place.
Same bat time, same bat channel. This is your weekly dose of medicine with just enough sugar to make it go down well. Our job here is to be your go-to place for news for retail, tech, and e-commerce.
Yes, and we'd like to remind everyone we are not professionals. We're getting
No.
there slowly. And we also welcome feedback because feedback is a gift, right? With Valentine's coming up, that could be a little gift for us, right, Rick?
Feedback is a gift, and I agree Valentine's Day is coming up, but speaking of romance, there's a big event happening this weekend. I
There
hear
is.
there's a football game being played, but there's something else more important happening.
There really is, Rick. And we talked about this, I think, last year. Again, talk about gifts that keep on giving. Tay Tay, Travis, they're back, and it is a will they or won't they propose after the game. What do you think is going
Right.
to happen? It's really the question on
Um,
everyone's mind.
Look, we're gonna have to make a prop bet here on the score.
Okay.
My bet is 41 Eagles, 28 Chiefs.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. Like I don't know. I think it's going to be the reverse because you
Oh.
guys know that the refs have been in the Mahomes pocket all
Hmm.
season long, and the NFL, just like last year, wants to see the aftermath of a Tay Tay Trav reunion. So I just
They
think that
do.
I think it's going to be awesome.
Well, the
Uh,
refs. Speaking of Mahomes' pocket, the refs are in Mahomes' pocket. So there you go.
that's what I'm
Um,
saying. That's what
if
I'm saying.
you win, I will wear a red wig,
Oh, okay.
and if I win, you're gonna wear a green wig.
Oh, a green wig. Okay. Um, I'll up the ante for you. If
Okay.
you win, if you win, I will come on and I will do my Eminem "Lose Yourself" rap on one of the shows.
Nice. All
Okay.
right. If you win, I'm gonna do you one better.
Okay.
If you win, I will do one of my famous Johnny Cash
All right.
karaoke's.
Okay. This is going to happen. So
All
here you
right.
go.
We're excited.
We're a live show, and let us know in the comments if you have other ideas or what your bets are. We know friend of the show Marty Armstrong, who he's cheering for. Big Eagles. You may or may not want to talk to him the whole Sunday, right?
Yeah,
He's
you
just going
certainly
to go.
can't look him in the eye. He'll
No,
like stare you down. EAGLES.
that's
Fly,
right.
Eagles, fly.
Fly Eagles fly. It's happening. So either way, it's going to be interesting. And as a big fan of the Super Bowl, Rick, do you also like follow the commercials, or you just
I think the
go get a
commercials are
drink?
going to be more interesting. Next week, we're going to have to highlight what each of us thought was the top commercial.
Yeah,
Um, last year, I feel like Dick's was pretty good. Debuted last
they
year.
did big money.
Uh, we'll see if they have a commercial about de minimis this year. But, oh, that's getting ahead of our
We
headline
are getting ahead of
hangover.
ourselves. Yeah.
Right.
We also had some other kind of major things happen, which was the groundhog saw its shadow.
Yes.
And it'll be interesting to see. Will we start to now see reference points to that in the apparel earnings results as people talk about what 6 more weeks of winter is doing to their inventory turn? What do you think?
It's cold as hell here in New York City, so I believe I never want to doubt the groundhog. So, I'm here. Like the news cycle, it seems like we wake up like layoffs, politics, football, Groundhog Day. It's maybe too much.
TikTok, TikTok
Yes,
videos.
exactly. TikTok
Great.
videos.
Well, you know
So
what is a steady is our sponsor, Miracle. They are the
yes,
catalyst of commerce. We all know that e-commerce is changing at a breakneck speed. If you're playing by the rules of retail's past, you're leaving money on the table. But Miracle is empowering 450 retailers to flip the script, transform their business, and create this amazing flywheel of AI-powered marketplace and retail media solutions. So check Miracle out, and we thank them so much for helping bring this
Yes.
wonderful piece of journalism your way on
Exactly.
Friday.
Exactly. Thank you. Your contributions make us. I feel like I'm on like a PBS donor drive right now.
That's right. That's right. So let's dive into the headline hangover, and then Rick, you're going to introduce our amazing guest, and we can't wait
Yes.
to hear from her. She's going to probably help us unpack a lot of things. There's a theme that we have on the show, which is this a Cinderella story? Is this a Maverick or a Braveheart story? So we can't wait to unpack, but I'm going to kick us off with just what's going on in the world of retail. And it does feel like a theme you and Nick talk about a lot. This age of efficiency is here to stay.
Yes.
Layoffs are becoming sort of table stakes now. And we do see this happen. It is a cycle, right? People get through
Right.
their budgets. They get through their end of year. They start to kick off, their next fiscal year and, are shoring things up. They're reorging. They need to cut things to invest in others. So we saw a lot of announcements like Salesforce having layoffs. Estee Lauder laid off 7,000, which was 11% of their workforce.
That's right.
Adidas, which coming off of an amazing earnings call, shocked their
Is
staff.
is that Adidas?
Adidas, yes, sorry. I didn't get the German down. So
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And a lot of the themes in the Adidas announcement were, that they're just too complex. They need to align their staffing and their org structure to the right business model that they need moving forward, which really just has like efficiency tattooed all over it. So
Exactly.
Is this a theme we're going to keep hearing, you think?
100%. I think we started talking about the age of efficiency last year. I think we took a cue from what Walmart was doing. That played out through this year. This year, I kind of felt one of the things in my keynote event at NRF was that I thought revenue would be a little bit more in ascendancy this year, but it doesn't seem like the January played out that way. People are already. It feels like we're in year 2 of this age of efficiency, and if anything, that's accelerating. Certainly, the federal government feels like they're in the age of efficiency.
Setting the tone, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, who's getting efficient and breaking in some cash are your friends at the Zon, right?
Yeah, so last night Amazon reported their Q4 2024 and full year 2024 earnings. The top line numbers was Amazon grew 10% year over year, generally 9%, 10%, depending if you're talking about the full year or the quarter. The real headline is that they doubled their operating income, which is like a crazy outcome, especially on the fact of that they held sales and marketing expenses essentially constant or slightly down, which never happens. You would always see, I remember I used to watch Salesforce earnings like way back in the day, even 10, 15 years ago. They would grow their sales and marketing expenses 20%, and the company grew 20%. So it was crazy that Amazon is able to grow sales like this. AWS and the ads business are super highlights, especially from a profitability point of view. Let's see where the big numbers are. AWS is now a $115 billion run rate business, and they now have a $69 billion ads business.
Yeah. It's you kind of think that they've hit a peak and they just keep going. Right. We've talked about this, I think, for as long as you've been covering Amazon and earnings, and we've been doing this show, that AWS and ads have really been their cash cow, and that doesn't seem to be letting up. And I think another highlight in the earnings was international starting to hit that profitability curve as well. So what do you feel like the dynamics are happening in the global business?
Yeah, globally, I feel like what Amazon has talked about and what has come to fruition is that their more mature markets are starting to hit profitability on sort of the U.S. timeline, like 5 to 7 years after they introduce. And so Amazon can now tell a credible story like, look, year 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to be unprofitable. But as we get volume and scale in the logistics network, it's going to turn to profitability. Last year, Amazon international was like negative half a point, negative 1% margin, like kind of a net operating margin. This year, now they're already at 3%. So that's like a 4 point swing. They went, to over $1 billion in and cash flow from international business, where last year, 2023, they lost money.
Yeah.
So it's like a huge, like a multi-billion-dollar swing there. The other thing they did in Q4 is redesign completely their inbound inventory network. Now, if you watched anything on LinkedIn and Twitter in Q4, it was a disaster for sellers. Like,
Yes.
inventory was stuck everywhere. People were really like very upset at Amazon. Why Amazon did this in Q4, I would really have no understanding of. However, if I know anything about Amazon, is that they tend to fix things related to logistics. And so I would, if you give Amazon another 3, 4, 5 months, I expect the inbound improvements to bear fruit. And I think why they did that is because they're now getting this like very efficient outbound network from the DC forward, like from their same day facilities and things like that, and their automated warehouses. But they couldn't take in inventory fast enough to to handle the size and capacity of that network. So they had to make some changes there too.
Yeah. What didn't come up was grocery, right?
Oof.
It's just like I don't know. It is not the gift that keeps on giving for Amazon.
Yeah.
Do they need to just throw in the towel on grocery, or what's going to happen?
Yeah, look, Amazon. Here's the big problem. I mean, they seem to cycle through execs. That's number one, and so every year or two they have a different strategy. They tried to bring in old Tesco Tony. Now he went to Wonder, who's gonna, he's gonna lose them even more money, guarantee it. So, on the side of Amazon, you have a specialty grocer that they bought in a mass market company like Amazon. That's, to me, that's like the big headline mismatch that we have here. You're not going to scale Whole Foods to be a world,
Yeah.
5,000 stores. There's just not
Yeah.
that much need for a more expensive grocery store. Amazon has tried to experiment some with Amazon Fresh, but are they really going to outcompete like Trader Joe's, Aldi's, Costco, Kroger, Publix, HEB in every market?
Crowded space.
It's very crowded and it's going to be very expensive to get there. And Wall Street is not going to tolerate them investing so much in stores because
Yeah.
they're spending 80 billion. Speaking of other headlines, they're spending $80 billion a year in capex for AI
Right.
this year.
So Eric brought up a pharmacy. Any highlights or things you
Yeah,
heard
no,
about
no
pharmacy?
big highlights on pharmacy, no big highlights on grocery. It just seems like it's sort of like, oh yeah, we're in this, and by the way, like we're in driverless cars, we're launching satellites. It's not really mentioned.
Yeah. Like the
So,
Wizard of Oz. Don't look
yes,
behind the curtain.
100%.
Look at all these other cool things we have going on. Okay, so talking about some sleight of hand, it's been a big shift in de minimis imports, and with all of the changes happening, the latest government shifts. So we've been talking about de minimis and how that's really been exposed and exploited to a certain extent by Chinese sellers, specifically people like Temu, Shein, and others, where like in 2016 it was 9.2 billion of the imports. By 2023, 54.5
Hmm.
billion, and those Chinese sellers
Wow.
accounted for nearly 60% of all the shipments. I guess the interesting thing is is the playing field now level, because there's been all of these shifts and changes. Is that going to impact the way that they import, or I think there's this other camp, their margins are just so good, it's just going to take something from being $4 to $8. Who really cares? Do you
Yeah,
have a
I
take on this?
think, yeah, I think there are two sides of it. Number one, Hundo P, that's definitely going to happen because if a $3 item will become $5, it's still going to be cheaper than an item you could buy somewhere. So that consumer, I think, is still going to be trading down. I think the other side you have is this is really, de minimis wasn't eliminated everywhere. this is really for country of origin China shipments
Yeah.
into the United States. And so if you can, it doesn't matter like where the inventory is, if you house it in Mexico or in the United States, if it's coming from China, you're going to have to pay duties on it. But if you manufacture in Vietnam, the de minimis right now, my understanding is it's still $800. And
Right.
so they haven't really changed those things as a result. And so I kind of feel like we still haven't seen the last of this story, especially with like tariffs getting changed every day and week, and like, oh, we're gonna have a 20% tariff. Nope, it's zero. 24 hours later.
Yeah. So is the moral of the story, there's always a loophole. And as long as we've got savvy supply chain experts, they can help navigate those loopholes.
I definitely think though. I think that's the case. I also think there are a lot of logistics providers that are trying to deal with people who are caught flat-footed by this change. But again, if your manufacturing is in China, you're still paying duties. Period. It's just a question of when you're paying duties. If you don't want your consumer to pay duties, you better land it and pay duties at import time rather than having the consumer pay it at because it's coming in an air freight on a single kind of parcel by
Right.
parcel basis.
Right. Which that's so 2010, right? I feel like that was
Yeah.
the strategy back in your probably Pitney Bowes days, right?
Exactly. We love
We're
that.
over that. So speaking of nostalgia, flashbacks, we talked about last week, you wiping down your groceries during COVID. This week, we wanted to pay homage to our former employer, Barnes and Noble, because they really do have this amazing Cinderella story and are proving that people will buy books if your stores aren't a heartless disaster. And I think that's really been the theme. They're opening 60 stores, announced it this week. It was not only in the retail headlines that we follow, but it was even on Good Morning America, and they were attributing it to book talk. But really, the story is they've gone back to the basics, similar to Starbucks and Brian Nichol, of what made them special. They're investing in the booksellers. They're bringing unique recommendations that are tailored to the market. So saying, hey, the market, the customer. We're not going to accept these kind of payoffs, basically, like the payola in the music industry. We're not taking payola from the publishing industry and, kind of crowding things or shoving things down people's face that they don't like. I walk in my Barnes and Noble store that's like just a mile away, and there's
I love it.
handwritten notes, and it is pretty
It's like your
charming.
Starbucks with your notes.
It is. That's not my name, right? But yes, they know my name, and they know that they know the books I like. The thing that was funny about this article, though, was their CEO said, we have. He also runs bookstores in the UK. We've nailed e-commerce in the UK, but our US platform is garbage. And when you were there, where that was like a .NET technology.
Yes.
So I think they moved to ATG Oracle. I'm not really sure what they're on now, but that's like probably the next evolution of their turnaround story.
Yeah,
So.
they are re-platforming. I don't think it's done yet, but it's in progress. So we'll see what comes out of that.
Yeah. So I guess the real question here is there a happily ever after for Barnes and Noble?
I think there could be. Look, people, there's something about a bookstore. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. They make great gifts for people, and it's a great place to sort of hang out on a lazy afternoon, particularly on a weekend. So I do think there is a happily ever after here, as long as the experience is good, and I think that's what really people need to focus on, and I think that's going to be the formula for Starbucks as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people who create amazing experiences, I think it's time to bring Dimple on. So can you give her the intro she is due?
Yes. So Dimple and I met a few years back. We were both collaborating on re-platform projects at the same time. And we just started chatting, like all these things, like platforms and SIs and how to do it and UX and what apps to do and what kind of team do you need. And so we kind of became very fast friends. And then we collaborated on a Shop Talk presentation a little over 2 years ago now. And now it seems like we catch up in person at conferences, which is a lot of fun. So Dimple has been the head of e-commerce and UX design at Chico's. She's former head of product at FTD. She's been at Walgreens. She's been at Adobe, and so her background in retail and e-com and design has been pretty legendary. So I'm really happy to have her energy here on the show. So everyone, please give a warm welcome to Dimple Rao.
Yay!
Guys,
Simple.
I am so excited to be here. This is like a mini Shop Talk reunion. People
Yes.
passionate about retail and e-commerce, and it's a wonderful way to end my week.
Well, we're so glad you're here. Well, Dimple, before the show, we were talking a little bit about what you've been up to. You have an amazing career. I mean, it's extremely inspiring, and all the things that you've accomplished. And we're going to unpack the trends that you've seen and your experiences, but would love to hear what you've been up to lately. And I know you went on a sabbatical, and
Yes.
sounds like you've had some amazing things like happening recently.
It's I took the back half of the year off in 2024, and it's been transformative for me. Initially I thought, well, a few months would be good. And I look back and I think, 6 months really gives you the space to create space in your brain.
Yeah.
I find myself reading a lot more books because I'm able to focus on the one thing. I've traveled. I went to France. We were there during the Olympics. I
Oh
went
wow.
back to
Oh,
India.
that's amazing.
Yeah, and I hadn't been to India till before COVID, and it was fascinating. The proliferation of digital payments in India was
Mm-hmm.
fascinating for me. I mean, your street vendors who are selling fruit have a PTM like QR code that you can
Wow.
pay them. It was just sort of, they're making progress in these like ways that you have to be there to see it.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
it's been absolutely wonderful for me. And here we are in the new year, and I'm excited for what's next.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, first of all, I mean, it's just amazing that you're getting to spend that time, and
Yes.
we're happy that you are refreshed, especially for a topic as dynamic as the one we're talking about, which is transformation, innovation, who's executing well, what does it mean to be a modern e-commerce brand delivering kind of great experiences.
Yeah.
And so I think, why don't you talk about, like, as you start to think about just those topics, like what are
Yeah.
some of the times that you look at the stops in your career that have shaped your view on some of those topics?
Yeah. I was thinking about this. I was reflecting a little bit, and one of the other reasons these 6 months have been great is for the first time, I looked at retailers and what they're doing purely as a customer. I was just sort of like,
Mhm.
is this truly delightful? I have a teenage daughter, and so Sephora and Ulta have taken a large
Yeah.
share of my wallet. But every time I
Yes.
go, I walk away with 2 or 3 more products that I intended to buy, and I'm happy
Uh-huh.
about it.
Right.
It's this little the trend that has stayed from COVID, this trend of self-care and kind of doing
Ah.
the things that make you feel good. I think a lot of retailers are losing that price value proposition, right? And I
Mhm.
think Sephora and Ulta have both gotten this really great affordable luxury. Every
Mm.
price point is accessible to you, and they're doing this incredible job of using online to drive
Mm.
traffic to the store and using stores to drive traffic online. I think it is
Mm.
like it's this circle they're doing incredibly well. They're not treating it as like these two disjoint
Mhm. Mhm.
experiences for the customer.
Yeah. And when you've kind of taken this perspective in your career of probably
Yeah,
pushing some of these transformative projects, a lot of times, and Rick's mentioned this, people will rather gnaw their arm off than go through a replatform.
sure.
What's kind of given you the conviction and
Yeah.
also the guts to take on some of those big initiatives?
Yeah. I think that I've been extremely fortunate in my career. I think Walgreens was the one where I think they were ahead of their time from a digital
Mm,
transformation lens. Like they started the e-commerce journey before it became completely necessary, right? They weren't sort
mm,
of like trying to catch up. They were truly investing for the future.
yeah.
But in the last few years that I've worked, it's really become about we need more capabilities than we have, and we can't build those capabilities fast
Hmm.
enough
Mm,
because our technology is very outdated, is not nimble and flexible enough. So it's been less about kind of we're innovating, but more about we are creating a foundation that will allow us to innovate, right?
mm,
Because Rick and I talked about this quite a bit. It's the re-platform in and of itself isn't sort of this big thing. There are things that will
yeah.
come out of it that are great. Your site performance will improve, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. However, it gives you this foundation for when tariffs change or your supply chain is disrupted, you can recover faster. You can
Hmm.
you
You're
can
right.
deliver to the customers what you need faster. And I think that is sort of what I've been very lucky that the executive teams that I have worked with have recognized the importance of that foundation.
Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, I think it's such a good point because I think it's lost in a lot of these business case discussions. I think there are a lot of people stuck in this business case trap right now
Right.
where CFOs are super skeptical of a replatform because they've seen it all before.
Hmm.
And the teams are like, we can't be on this 15-year-old platform anymore, for Christ's
Right.
sake. Like,
Please,
Right.
we
please
need,
help
please,
us.
please, like, put a bullet in us or let us
Yeah.
do our
Yes.
Yeah.
thing.
Yes, exactly. And I think that again at Chico's, our CDO, our CEO, our CFO, as well as the board, I could
Right.
not have asked for a more kind of supportive
Huh.
leadership team, and one that understood we were investing for the future. We were
Yeah.
investing to kind of make ourselves resilient against what may come. And I had fantastic partners in our head of e-commerce, in our merchandising, our brand leaders. So I really do believe that if if the message hadn't come from the C-suite and our board
Hmm.
that this is an imperative, and then we didn't have the right leaders who said, look, it's going to get bumpy along the way.
Yeah.
Sure.
We understand that, but we're going to keep at it. But I think that I would be remiss to, like, this is one of the things that I talked about is when I joined Chico's, they had spent a lot of time making the core business really good.
Hmm.
So we were approaching this transformation from a position of strength.
Mm.
I think it's incredibly hard if your profitability is
Yeah.
not working to then say we're going to set aside more money to transform ourselves, right? Like that, especially as a
Yeah.
public company, that's really hard. So I do think that if you're approaching a transformation, really think about what are the business metrics that are broken right now. How is your profitability looking? Is this like, because there are a lot of places where you can start. You could start on your planning and allocation side. Are we buying
Mm.
the right, sizes? Are we buying the right quantities? Are you
Yep.
allocating things well? If that's broken, like fix that, because
Hmm.
the improvements you get, you can then invest.
Right.
Right.
But I think that if you just start from the sexy stuff,
Mm.
oftentimes you run out of money before you've really made a dent in your business.
You run out of money, people get distracted, people lose
Yes,
focus, and like there's a new sexy thing around the corner,
exactly.
right? And so
Right.
as a result, you're in the middle of this transformation, you stop doing it. You bring up such an interesting point, which I really love, which is like, where does the transformation start? And so like I wrote down this question, who's pushing who? And it
Yeah.
sounds to me, in your situation, the board and the C-suite was pushing you, not you particularly, because you were like
Yeah.
obviously pushing as well, but
Right. Right.
the prime mover, if it's not the board, is transformation possible in the situation where you're pushing uphill versus sort of like catching the ball rolling downhill?
Look, I think it's really hard if you don't have an executive team that sort of understands the larger strategic play, right?
Mm.
Beyond that, you get into a lot of like conversion rate optimization things,
Sure.
and
Turning
you're
little
just
dials. Yeah.
like if you're
Yeah.
like if you have a team that is constantly asking, how did we do this week, what happened, how is the performance moving next week, why haven't we shown improvement, that becomes your incentives are very different. Then you're just going after those like short term things.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if you have a team that goes, look, we want to move from here to here. We're not just trying to move, a little bit. We're trying to move a lot.
Right.
And so it's going to take a lot. And when we get there, have we bought enough, of merchandise to like sell that? So it's
Right.
a very sort of, you bring all the pieces of the puzzle together. But really you need, I can't stress enough how so my boss, who was our chief digital officer, he's done a lot of these transformations.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And I can't stress, and then me, our head of e-commerce, VP of e-commerce, our VP of engineering, we had all done this several times.
Hmm.
So we understood sort of what we were getting ourselves into. And you don't need every single person who's
Mm.
done this. But I think if you have a team who's never done this, it's a very hard thing to take to the
Yeah.
finish line, right? It's like, I'm a marathon runner, and you're running a marathon at a sprinter's pace.
Yeah.
If you run a marathon, there's this wall people talk about at mile 20 where you feel like you can't like go past it. But if you run it right, or if you're like just this really gritty person, you push through the wall. And I think that it takes a group of people who have pushed through the wall to
Mm.
kind of carry the organization through to get to the finish line.
Yeah. You have to have that fortitude is basically what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Right.
And so for someone like you who is so impassioned around like these transformation opportunities,
Yeah.
do you start to vet that before you even think about your next role? Like, is someone going to be interested in pushing things forward or doing things differently? Is that kind of a culture check you have as you're kind of evaluating what you want to do next?
I definitely think, look, I have been a part of organizations where I thought I could just, I could be the person sort
Muscle
of
through.
Yeah.
like, to like do the rah and get everybody,
Yeah.
like pull everybody along the way. And what I've realized over time is you need a few of those individuals. I think
Right.
that it is a team sport. Digital transformation is a team sport. And it needs enthusiasm and buy-in from people at all levels of the organization, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if your board and your C-suite are bought in, but you don't have the talent to execute it,
Mm.
it's not going to work. If you have
Yeah.
the talent to execute it, but you're making the bar so high, the C-suite, then at some point people get frustrated and they're like, okay, this is just not a battle I can win. I'm just going
Yeah.
to do what you tell me. So it
Right.
needs buy-in and getting the right talent at all levels of the organization, which
Yeah.
is again, it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it sounds like you had a really special opportunity at Chico's,
I did.
and that does not happen too often in the corporate world, which is you have like a board, a C-suite, and then a talented team to execute.
Yeah.
I remember like Jess, you and I had that experience for like a year and a half at Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
where we were on the our job was to help build the marketplace team, and it turned out like when we came in, marketplace was the top priority. And so like for that period of time we had like the board asking us for updates, like what do you do, what do you need to go faster. We were like reading out to the C-suite. We had engineering teams like
Right.
wanting
Dedicated.
to, dedicated to doing something lab. We had marketing teams were kind of supporting us.
They became my
Jess
besties, though.
Jess
They were my
was
best friends.
wrangling them with like booze and treats.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the other thing I want to call out is if you look at mid-size or even large organizations, right? There are a lot of systems integrators that you're working with. It is not all in-house, so you
Right.
Sure.
also need the right partners. You need the right mix of like onshore versus offshore to make your, CapEx dollars go
Mhm.
Hmm.
as far as you can. So again, teams that are comfortable working in a distributed way, teams that are comfortable kind of being self-starters, because there is I've done these replatforms at so many companies, but each company is so different.
Right.
Yeah.
There is not a there's not a true playbook. There's not a
Uh,
like the couch
yeah,
potato to
couch to
Yeah.
pancake. First
5K or
we do
something.
this,
Yeah.
Yes.
second we do. There isn't that. So you do need, and again, for me, like Rick was such a great sounding board. Rick, I'm thinking through this. Is this like who can I talk to? Each person I talked with like was very helpful in connecting me with three others.
Yeah.
Some of our vendor partners were incredible at like kind of giving us the building the know-how internally. So
Right.
Hmm.
I do think that having those relationships and having the right team assembled, both internal and external, is a key part of
Uh huh.
a successful
I
transformation.
mean, this is we're talking about org now because you're talking about like insource versus outsource and these
Mhm.
SIs and in their role. But I mean, how the org has looked 10 years ago, 5 years ago is different than how it's going to look 5 years from now.
Right.
Are there going to be chief digital officers 5 years from now, or is just going to be in everyone's DNA?
It, I think you're seeing it now.
Hmm.
I think you're already starting to see that. Um, what I hope, right, is that organizations start to work more cohesively.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So I was very lucky at Chico's where I had end-to-end ownership of product. So that
Yeah.
included digital, it included in-store, it included our customer service center,
Yeah.
all of our back-end systems. And so you were not building products in silos. You were not building one experience for your online customer and another for your in-store. And you were always thinking through, if I build this, what will happen here? If I build something here, what will happen here?
Right.
So really starting to break down those silos and make organizations,
Hmm.
able to carry each other through is going to be important. I think revenue, profitability, like I think profitability, I think is going to be
Hmm.
and not just through raising prices, right? Consumers are starting to fight back. They're
Yeah.
Right.
saying, look, you can't, I'm not paying, $300 for 100% polyester like blazer. And
Yeah.
so now you're really starting to say, I can't keep raising prices to improve my numbers. You really have to start looking at how do I preserve my margin? How do I do things better? And I think that this is for me, I feel very strongly that when you talk about AI, when you talk about Gen
Hmm.
AI, like this should not be like a solution in search of a problem. This should
Hmm.
be,
Hmm.
what are we trying, like what can we not
Yeah.
accomplish today that AI can help us with, right? For apparel, photo shoots are a huge drain of money.
Yep.
However, I want to see how this dress is going to look on me.
Sure.
That also reduces the likelihood of returns, which a lot of like retailers are struggling with right
Yeah.
now. So how can you use AI at scale to like generate a lot of product photography, a lot of content, a lot of product attributes that help with search? So it's sort of like we have a problem, we have new technology now. Can we bring those together to solve
Yep.
versus what are we going to do with Gen AI? What's our plan? And that
Yeah.
just doesn't seem to be like the right point to start.
No, but that's always the question from the board. And so like, it's
Right.
good to have, you should have your game plan. To your point,
Yeah.
like where do you look at the challenges your business is facing today, stack rank and prioritize those challenges. And then you can say, all right, and here's where AI could slot in to help us
Exactly.
solve those challenges efficiently versus starting from like, we need AI. Where should we go
Yeah.
get it?
Yeah. You know, one of my I have been working on and off with this gentleman, Noam Paransky, who used to be Chief Innovation Officer at Tapestry.
Yep.
And he talked about how, you almost will have two browsing experiences, right? One which is for humans, and one which is like for the bots or the agents or whatever
Yeah.
you call it.
Right.
And so, kind of, how do you can't get to that with the workforce that we have today, the size of the workforce that we have today. And
Yeah.
so I do think it's going to require new ways of thinking, and kind of, trying to use all of the data and computing power to enable what customers are expecting of us.
Yeah.
Right.
I would love, Dimple, because we talked a lot about talent and org. What would be or what is the way you evaluate talent today? Like, how do you assess who can
Yeah.
be on the bus and help us with this
Hmm.
transformation? That could be talent from an SI perspective, but also
Yeah.
talent with an internal team.
Yeah. Look, I think that teams are getting leaner.
Hmm.
So self-motivated people are very, very critical,
Hmm.
because I think that the amount of time that leaders used to be able to spend sort of coaching and mentoring starts to like get really constrained. So you need
Yeah.
people who are going to be motivated to start on their own, kind of go figure out who they need to talk to learn the
Hmm.
skills that they need. I think that comfort with technology is going to just be critical for every single person,
Hmm.
and comfort with data, sort of data in various ways, right?
Yeah.
Not just internal but external, and then getting from data to insights.
Got it.
Oftentimes I've found that, organizations have like so much data, but nothing is actionable, and there's
Yes.
no insights that is like the so
Yeah.
what of it is lost.
Yes.
So I think that the motivation, internal motivation, comfort with technology and data, and like just like a critical thinking mindset, and then a ton of intellectual curiosity. Because I know that the recent generations, and myself included, I've had a lot of different industries that I have worked
Mm-hmm.
in. And it's sort of, can I come in and really learn how the pharmacy business works, right? I didn't know anything about pharmacy when I joined Walgreens, and now I can answer a lot of these questions. I didn't
Yeah.
know anything about apparel when I joined, but it's sort of, and nobody gave me a manual that said, here, take the next year to learn
Right.
about the apparel industry. So kind of like being able to learn really fast and adapt yourself is going to be really, really important. And those are like the big levers I look at.
Yeah. Especially in terms of generative AI, Jordan Salef had a good question. He talked about there's a difference between content generation for its own sake and authentic content generation.
Right.
How do you find that balance, and do you think corporations even realize this right now?
I think that one of the things I used to think a lot about is both Nordstrom and Taylor,
Hmm.
or Loft, are doing a wonderful job of creating videos
Hmm.
for their products.
Hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, I watch these videos
Huh.
because they truly kind of like show you how a piece of clothing moves, etc. Right? And so I don't want to see the models like wearing something. It's
Yeah.
not going to look the same on me. And I love seeing pictures of models in Paris, but really, how is this going to, flow
Right.
like in a boardroom?
Not real
So
life. Yeah.
yeah, so I think that there's that. Influencers, it was sort of like this. It was, we didn't have anything, then we had, it was like a meaningful influence, and now it just feels like it's just like trying to sell me things I don't need.
Yeah.
So I think that balancing the having enough content out there created by people who have built trust amongst communities, but keeping that sort of aligned with your brand, your value proposition, and truly kind of like, does my product match the content that I am putting out? And this is where, right, like, one could argue, if that was important, Shein would never be where it is today.
Sure.
Right? Like, I mean, like,
Right.
when have you ever gotten any? I don't shop at Shein, but like from everything I see, all the reviews are about like, did this actually look anything like what I
Right.
No, but it's minimal lead, Dimple. Minimal lead.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
And
what's
so,
important.
but I do think that consumers are getting smart, and they want to actually get what they bought.
Yes.
And so I do think content is important. I think the way people are searching for things is changing dramatically. And so I think that you can't show up in search without the underlying data, right? So I think that, and then I do think over the next few years, from my experience, personalization has been more or less like a buzzword. You have like
Yeah.
sort of, these like segments that you create, et cetera, et cetera. But now I think that you have the ability, the computing power, all the data sets to start saying, can, what Jess sees look very, very different from what Dimple sees versus what Rick sees. And so I think that creating that content and data is going to be really, really important, but authentic.
Yeah, these are, I mean, moving personalization beyond a buzzword. I definitely think these are topics. Look, we can keep talking around for hours here with you. I think as we wrap up, I would love to have kind of go around the horn here and talk about predictions. I mean, look, predictions are, in my opinion, generally worthless. I almost rather, if there are a set of principles or even just one principle in the next 5 years that you're looking to see sort of increase and drive or should be driving better decision making and outcomes for brands, like, what do you see as that?
I am going to give a very an answer that is very sort of personal to me. I don't know that this has enough of the corporate spiel, but I think that from a sustainability and doing good for our Earth lens, I hope that we really start to think about kind of how much we are manufacturing, how much of it is
Yeah.
good versus just stuff that ends up in landfills. And we start becoming thoughtful about like, what is the impact of this crazy supply chain that we have created
Yeah.
Right.
to our lives in general, right? I am often starting to say I'm going to buy stuff from my local store, even though it's a little bit more expensive. One, because I need the local stores around, but two,
Yeah.
it's a smaller footprint environmentally. And I am very consciously not shopping fast fashion. So there are, if I can wait for 5 days to get something, I do that because
Yeah.
like I don't need everything delivered next day. So I hope that as we focus on profitability, as we focus on agility, that we don't lose sight of like the cost of all that, and that it plays like a role in our decision making.
Yeah. I love that, Dimple. I'm like super inspired by it because gets lost in the mix of the things that are impacting the environment, our economy, all of those type,
Right, right.
it is very real. And there is this resurgence, it does feel like, of people wanting to support the local
Yes,
independent, brands and
Right.
retailers. And I think
yes.
that's actually, while people might have a lot of negative things to say about TikTok, I think that's a really interesting thing about
Yeah.
like a social network like TikTok
Right.
is this discovery of
Absolutely.
localization and a bit of
Yeah.
bringing it back to like the independent brand owner, right?
Exactly. The
Yeah.
connections that you're building, right, as a
Yeah.
community and as a society. I agree.
Yeah. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, Dimple, and we're going to be friends now. That
Yes.
so, I mean, it's been so wonderful to talk to you, and you have a lot of fans. Clearly, there's been some really good chatter in our comment section. We're going to have you back. I heard
Yes. Thank
you
you
know
for
about our
having
dance party, so we have a dance off on this show. So I hope you got your moves ready.
No one told me that.
Well, we're in it now. Here we
You're here
come.
now.
Here we come.
Yay. Oh.